Hello, YouTube. Well, it's like almost 4 o'clock in the morning here in Indio, California, in the Coachella Valley. And I can't sleep. Pain in my mouth with my teeth woke me up. And once I woke up, I started worrying about my ability to survive. Because after I applied for public aid, because I have no money, I can't pay a deductible. And with $1,100 in Social Security that hasn't even started yet, doesn't start until next month, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford the dental work or medical care that I require. So here I am. I woke up in pain, but I couldn't go back to sleep because of my fear of the United States corporation of privately owned corporations that call themselves my government. My government is a corporation, and it wasn't supposed to be that way. According to William Mount, who you can find here on YouTube, telling the truth about our government every day, they snuck documents in after the Civil War and after the Revolutionary War, that the Europeans snuck documents in to give foreign European corporations control of the American government while the people believe that they're in charge. My relationship with Amazon has been the only joy in my life since I was locked up in the concentration camp and my stolen car was repossessed in a conspiracy between Honda and Geico and the Peoria police of Arizona. But now that's all at risk, right? Because the government is going to say that although there are no United States dollars involved in my transactions, in fact, most of the products that I get come from China, Korea, India, other countries. And I myself, if I were able to have the mental space to put together information from Chris Hauser and Brandon Joe Williams, I myself would not be calling myself an American citizen because I do not submit to the authority of the United States corporation that only has the legal power to work in Washington, D.C. Okay? That's all the legal power they have. However, they own the National Guard and the ability to control and deploy the National Guard. And the states have sheriffs and marshals and policemen and troopers. So although I don't agree with the idea that I must be a citizen of a private corporation that is actually a string of private corporations, I don't have the right to resist because it's war. It's war. The government occupies America and controls American labor, American assets, and American citizens. I was surprised at how intrusive the Social Security application system is. If you paid your money in, all you should say is, I'm ready, and then you get your money out. But instead, some states will tax it. So they'll give it to you only to take it back. The state will give it to you from government funds only so the government can take it back. So the very word government in the American language, in the English language, it might mean something different, but it doesn't. In the English language, the government was able to imprison debtors. Okay? In the European government, royalty owned everything by law, right? But in America, it's different. So in Europe, maybe government is exactly what it is. But in America, government is a lot of foreigners, Europeans, who have taken over control of the land with military force that they deploy through law enforcement and military and domestic military, like the National Guard. So while I know that absolutely no United States dollars are involved in any of my transactions with Amazon, no US dollars, because I don't charge US dollars. I'm unemployable. I don't charge anything to anyone. Plus, I went to graduate school for what, 16 years of my life, of my middle age? And did not get a degree because they didn't fulfill their obligations. Those professors wouldn't even read my work or seriously engage with my work, although the contract between us said they should. When I applied, the program said this is what would happen, but it didn't happen for me. People from all over the world, why Michael Shepherd's from Holland. He was able to come to the University of Massachusetts, have a wonderful time there, and get a PhD. His father, a Shell Oil Company executive in Holland, was able to come for his PhD. And I was invited to his defense so that he and his father could laugh at me behind my back. But I didn't get a degree. Don Levine, Maria Tomasco, Elizabeth Petroff, Bill Mobius, none of them on my committee would even read my work. Even the Black American Joe Scarrett refused to read my work. They wouldn't read my work. All the time I'm there, while Harvard University's Henry Louis Gates has robbed the Ford Foundation application to give my original scholarship to Brent Hayes Edwards and make him a Columbia professor. And now I'm languishing in poverty, right? So then I find out that when you apply for social services, so that you can go to the dentists who are controlled by associations, whose prices are fixed by associations, whose prices can only serve the rich, and even the rich get poor trying to get medical care in America since the associations, the American Dental Association, the American Medical Association, like every other association in America, all they've done is guaranteed nationwide price fixing, so you can't even go to another state for relief. Nationwide price fixing and protection of criminals in those professions. That's what the associations have done. They've done nothing for you and me, nothing, except deprive us of the ability to protest or fight or have any control. So when I apply for Social Security, I find out they want to know everything. They want to know, how much do you have in your bank? Do you have any investments? Do you have this? They want a complete financial picture, which is a total violation of my privacy. If I paid into the system, they don't have the right to ask me anything except, where do we put your money, ma'am? And thank you very much. But instead, they use this retirement time. They say, well, if you don't tell us everything about how you're surviving, we're not giving you anything. And if you lie to us, we get to prosecute you. We get to persecute you. We get to throw you in prison like we did Wesley Snipes. Well, Wesley Snipes was the IRS, but they all work. They all work as a cartel. They all work as a gang. They all share data. They share information. Now, when I say that I don't have the money to see a doctor about breast cancer, and I don't have the money to see a dentist about my teeth, they want to say, yeah, but your ex-husband has pity on you and pays your expenses. So you do have money. And you're just going to have to live outside and pay the dentist. And that's what they're in effect saying to me. And then they say, okay, although your relationship with Amazon has no money in it, no United States dollars at all, you're going to have to produce United States dollars to keep that relationship going. That relationship has been the only joy in my life. Writing, making videos, getting new products to test and examine, serving, serving. I can go to graduate school for free and get no money, but nobody says, oh, you want to know what? Your non employee compensation for teaching for free and studying for free for 16 from 1990 to 2004. That's how long I've stayed in the academic system trying to get a PhD. 1990 to 2004. Is that 14 years? That's how long. That's how much of my life. And I worked 24 hours a day. I worked constantly. When I did my dissertation exam and oral defense, Elizabeth Petroff, my committee chairman, said, I have never heard a better presentation before. Outstanding. They're all mumbling about how outstanding my work was, but none of them would read my work after that to make sure I got certification, to make sure I got the doctorate. So they left me unemployable because guess what? You're in a PhD program, you're in graduate school for 14 years and you don't have a degree and you don't have anybody to write references for you. Well, isn't that exactly the position that Sheldon L. Epstein left me in after I spent 4 entire summers of college working at Brunswick Corporation? And then he files an EEOC grant against himself and against me and sends me on a research trip to Chicago so he can tell the company, well, she took time off so she could go to Chicago and file an EEOC against us. And they're not allowed to tell me because of confidential clauses that they're not allowed to discuss it. So I don't even figure it out until Sheldon dies and his spirit confesses it to me. And I said, I should have had a V8. Boing. That's what happened to me. You know, Sheldon did not write a recommendation for me to go to law school because I was doing everything that a patent lawyer does day to day. I was doing their job. I was trained to do their job, and there wasn't much to it, if I don't mind saying. They got paid a lot of money to sit around doing nothing all day. And I did a little bit of that nothing too. Do you know that if I had gone to law school and Brunswick had hired me as a part of the Inroads Incorporated agenda, and I was an inroader, then I probably would have been Sheldon's boss within 10 years if he stayed with the corporation. Sheldon L. Epstein did not want to see that. So here I am working there from the week I turned 17 years old until the end of the summer I turned 20. Investing all that time, all that youth, all that work, all that energy. And Sheldon would never give me a raise. He never gave me a raise in the 4 years that I worked there, even though I asked him for a raise. Yes, I got up my courage, got over my shyness, and asked him for a raise. And he said no. You tell me how a grown man can see a woman struggling, working her way through college, knowing she's living, in frat houses and YWCA's and doesn't even have a car. And that SOB's not going to give me a raise in pay so that I can at least keep up with inflation. It's cruelty. Do you understand? So the day Sheldon Epstein, I asked him to be my mentor when I was 17 because I knew he would be a good trainer. And he said to me, even if you become a corporate lawyer, you'll never be able to live in my neighborhood because in my neighborhood, every real estate transaction has a covenant to it that says you can't sell, we can't sell to you. So he told me how the real estate associations have it set up to be sure that real Americans cannot get access to better neighborhoods. But they've got it so well done now that if you even try to cross the frontier into the better neighborhoods, you'll have police surveillance as well as local citizens watching you, challenging you, just like you saw in Roland Martin on Walking While Black. Now, that man was British. Surprise. But he was living in a nice neighborhood, and he was actually fired from his job because Roland Martin publicized the situation. So he was fired from his job. So when I worked for Brunswick Corporation, did they say, oh, non-employee, the true value of Silver Rain Running Cloud's work is this amount? No. When I'm in graduate school, did they say, well, the true value of Silver Rain Running Cloud scholarship and teaching and professing and research is this amount? No. But Henry Louis Gates saw the true value of it and stole it and gave it to a Motown heir, the heir of a temptation, the Motown Temptations, and gave him my scholarship that I'd been working on for the 10 years before I even got to graduate school. I had developed that research project. And I wanted to be able to go to Harvard and get access to the French translators that could translate all the newspapers from 1930 that I had on microfiche that Brent Edwards recalled and stole from a research archive, the only one in America that had this material, and stole it from that research library and didn't return it for 6 years. And for 6 years, I'm slaving away at the University of Massachusetts because when they recalled the material, guess what I did? I gave it back. And I asked them to make me a copy. But when I said, where's my copy of this microfiche that only exists in 2 libraries in the world, the Librairie Bibliotheca in France and this research library in Illinois? And they said, oh, we can't reproduce it. We can't make a microfiche for you because the material disappeared. I said, it disappeared. Who'd you check it out to? We don't have any records of that. And then just before Brent Hayes Edwards of Columbia University files his dissertation, releases his book based on my outline submitted to the Ford Foundation, overseen by Henry Louis Gates. My scholarship, my intellectual property stolen by PBS and Harvard's employee, Henry Louis Gates. Did they say, oh, your non-employee compensation value is this amount and pay me that from the government coffers? No, they didn't. But when I have a window of opportunity to actually get clothes and medical supplements and computers and microphones and lights, when I finally have an opportunity to gain some material security in life, what does the United States corporation, government, private agencies do? They say, well, you have to tell us all about it. You have to tell us your private business. You have to tell us how you have everything you own. And then you've got to convert the value of your own, which value 0. We all agree. The people in the transaction agree that the United States dollar value of the transaction is 0. Goose eggs. Because I have worked hard my entire life and never had the fair market value of my work from the United States government. But now they want a piece of me and a piece of my action. And they're not even protecting me in the public or private or corporate spheres. They're making sure that my ass is turned upward and they are pumping it in. It's not fair. It's not fair. And I guess I was cool. I'm so triggered because Medi-Cal, the Riverside County Medi-Cal, So Riverside County not only kicked me out of free lunch, but now the Europeans running it are kicking me out of free dental care and free medical care, although they've made sure that I've gotten nothing all my life. Not Riverside, but the governments, right? They didn't make my brother give me my $1 million inheritance. They didn't make Sheldon Epstein go to prison for stealing my intellectual property and fraudulently creating EEOC documents. His children do just fine. His daughter's a yoga instructor with 3 children. How'd she afford to have 3 children? Why is she doing a do nothing job like yoga instructor? And still she survives? Still she lives well? Well, that's from my sweat. Okay? Sheldon built his empire on my sweat and blood. And then he went to Northwestern University, where President Levine and Shapiro gave him a job, first for money and then for free. And he used his ham radio to transmit information all over the world surreptitiously. But Sheldon made a profession as a patent lawyer from stealing intellectual property after he tried it out on me. Other Northwestern students came next because the presidents of Northwestern made sure that Sheldon was all up in tech, the Technological Institute, gleaning, using computer networks to spy, stealing all the ideas we're stealing and patenting them on the sly. And that's how so he's got children and he's got grandchildren and they go on while my children can't even make a living. They don't have a big place to live. I could just men fight and men say things, like I would do this to the person. But women, we tend more to cry. Okay? I could just cry. That's how angry I am over my treatment. So now here I am applying for Social Security. And the private corporations that administer the funds and control the funds want to know everything about my financial profile when all they should know is where to send the money. And it isn't much. It's not at all what they promised us when we were young. Not at all. And they make it sound like a gift. So the Europeans in government can send money to Ukraine. They can send money to Israel. They can leave military supplies in Afghanistan. So they can be all over Europe and the Middle East where they're trying to conquer new lands. Eastern Europe. They're trying to move into Eastern Europe. After the failure of Germany to move in, they're trying once again. They're moving into Arabia. But what they're doing here is they already have us on lockdown because they already have us believing a myth about who we are, what our powers are, what our government is about, when our government is a privately held corporation with authority to act in Washington, D.C., according to Brandon Joe Williams. God bless him. And Christopher Hauser and Mark Christopher and Bill and Jane Mount. Because facts are facts. And that's the way it is. And then the private corporation, the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, is the Treasury Department a real part of the government? Or are they also privately owned? The IRS, these are privately owned, profit-making corporations living on the sweat off our back, violating the Constitution by demanding complete exposure of our financial position. Corporations don't have to give complete exposure of their financial corporations. And if we don't, they'll send the police and the judiciary after us. That's what they'll do. Do you know that the Constitution that the Europeans made was based on the evil and corruption they saw in Europe. And they said, we don't want that to happen to us here. That's a miserable life. Being a peasant, being a serf, it's a miserable life. Living under a monarchy, it really stinks. We don't want that for ourselves. So we're going to cover all the bases and create these documents that will promise us we can remain free. Oh, I don't think they were thinking about us. They might have at that point been so grateful for us tolerating and encouraging and helping and protecting and feeding them that they might not have known that they were sent here on a long-term plan to take over and rob us. They might have been innocent, just like some are innocent now, although I don't see how they can be. With the amount of European nationalist racism that I see in the open world, there's no way they're innocent about what they're doing. And with the amount of segregation that they're able to maintain in their own churches, housing, community centers, golf courses, restaurants. I mean, they will look at you, they will single you out, they will have a conversation with you to challenge your right to be there privately because they think they own everything, and they do. They've put it all on paper, and they've made their police follow through. And they've got people, when the police don't do it, you get the British immigrants and the Israeli immigrants and the French immigrants and the German immigrants. You get them to come to North America and assert the power of the Europeans to imprison and destroy real Americans. So here I am, unable to sleep from pain, and then unable to sleep because I fear my European dominated government at the county level, at the state level, at the municipal level, and at the federal level, because each one of those levels have private ownership. Memorial City, a city inside a city, a city inside Houston, is privately owned, just like Houston is. But how can you privately own property that belongs to me? My great grandmother came from Houston. They're the landowners there. But the concept of land ownership and titles and deeds and all that tricky mess, you own the land because you worked it and took responsibility for producing food or whatever it was you wanted to produce. You owned the land because you were the shepherd, the steward of the land. You didn't own the land because somebody created a paper and a title and a history that said, oh, that belongs to me. Oh, that used to be yours, but I have this paper. So here I am now, not able to sleep for fear that I'm going to lose my relationship with Amazon, which is the most valuable, important, joy bringing thing in my entire life. I love the chance to write. I'm a writer, but I don't get paid for it. I don't get US dollars in exchange. I never have. I've never gotten the true value of my work. But now they want to say, well, we're going to say that you and another party cannot have a private contract where you say, we're sorry, no United States dollars are involved. We're BRICS nations and we're not using dollars. So any kind of American US dollar valuation, any kind of a fair market value has to do with your market. And I'm not in your market. I'm not in your market at all. I never was in your market. But now in the senior years of my life, I finally catch a break with products from China and India. I finally catch a break with decent people. And when I try to retire and I try to get public services, they say, "Oh, you you have stuff. You own things. If you want any of the professional services, you have to try to sell what you own. You can't You can't have things unless you give us a piece of it. We're the European privately owned corporation that you think is your government. We are your government, but you don't know what government means. Government means occupying army. Government means takeover of resources. Government means you are conquered peoples, and we are the administrators over you. We are your life and death. We are your gods. So here I am again, second night in a row that I can't sleep for fear of the governments. Okay? And please remember, when I say governments, I'm speaking American. And in American language, governments means occupying Europeans and their military and paramilitary forces. Thank you for joining me. Silver Rain Running Cloud, over and out. The war goes on.